Moving on to the lower half of the case. First we'll remove this bit of shielding, larger size of Phillips screwdriver again. And it's this kind of screw with a washer on it because we're connecting to earth. You might have a bit of tape around this post, remove that, and then that comes out of the way. You can just lift it up from that end, but it's easier to see if I remove it completely. Next thing we'll do is detach all the wires that run from the magnetic heads to the record and playback board. All the wires from the array's head run into one single plug here. Because these wires are very thin and delicate, I am definitely going to use needle nose pliers to remove this plug. And then we have channels 1, 2, 3, 4 connecting to the record and playback head here. Again, I'm using the needle nose pliers. I'm not going to risk it to chance because some of these cables are so thin. And you can see that there are different colours of plastic for the 4 record heads, and that corresponds to a different colour of sockets on the board, so you don't need to worry about labelling them as you remove them. Next we're going to remove the earth connection between this board and the transport. Just remember that it joins on to this top left corner. That screw and the other 3 which attach the transport plastic posts are of a similar kind to the ones that were used to attach the mixer board into the top half of the plastic case. This long cable here is the main way that this board communicates the information from the transport control panel that sits above here to the transport. The cable detaches at this end at the back of the transport. The last connection between the transport and the rest of the system is 2 cables that plug into this little daughter board that has the pitch control on it. Be careful here because usually this doesn't come off all that easily. There's a bit of a plastic lip here that stops it. That can be broken off, but it makes it trickier to reassemble, so if you can, hold this down and pull those cables out. They're quite stiff, so I'm going to use pliers. And when you're reassembling, you want to feed them underneath here. Now that'll lift out. Very quickly I'll have a look at the capstan belt. During earlier testing the transport was working fine, and I can feel by touch that actually that feels okay. There isn't any need to replace that. Likewise, if I push my thumbnail into that pinch roller there, it bounces back. There's no black residue coming away in my fingers when I touch it. I've worked on this model of Portastudio a limited number of times before, but so far I haven't had any problems with rubber parts in this model. I suppose it's because they're so recent. I mean, this is a late 90s machine, whereas it's early 80s machines that I'm dealing with a lot of the time, like the 244 and the 246. So I don't know if it's just that these rubber parts haven't had enough time to deteriorate yet, or whether TETRAKAN and Tascam got information back that the rubber on their earlier models was corroding and they switched to a different kind of rubber. I said that I wouldn't change the belt because it was in sufficiently good condition. However, I would like these videos to have some sort of shelf life. In 4 or 5 years time there's going to be a whole bunch of these 424 Mark IIIs that require new belts. I would like to have that resource available for you if you need to change them. I'm going to use our size 0 Phillips head screwdriver. We're going to remove 1, 2, 3, 4 screws. These 2 screwed into these black plastic pegs that help hold the cassette in position are slightly longer, and these are slightly shorter and have our metal washer on them. And you can see when I remove that, the black peg comes away with it. This plate then tips back this way because there's little tabs that fit into holes on this plate here. You can see that there are 2 belts, belt that goes from the motor to this flywheel and turns it. If I remove this flywheel, you can see that there's another pulley on the other side, and then that has another thin belt and that goes around another pulley here, and that's to do this mechanism here for fast forward and rewind, also for take up reel to take up the slack, the tape that's passing over the heads. So I'm not using fresh belt, but this is how you would reinstall them. I would place this over that pulley, kind of holding it taut with one finger like that. Put the flywheel through this hole so the capstan emerges on the other side, and then hook that band over this black plastic pulley here. Give it a couple of turns and it should right itself. Watch out, because when you remove that flywheel there's a little plastic ring that comes off it. You need to put that back on like so and push it hard up against there. It's just to stop dust getting into this space here. Next I'll take the capstan belt, just leave it kind of like that. Get the plate, that pad should be on the opposite side of that wheel to hold it in place. These little tabs here are going into holes in this plate here in such a way that two sides of this plate fit inside these metal lips. Next I would get my shorter screws with the washer, and with the tab in that hole, then the correct hole to insert the screw into should line up here, and similarly on the other side. Then we'll get our black plastic pegs. They slot over this protruding lip at the bottom of the mechanism, and then the longer of those screws go through the hole and into the metal plate beyond. Same idea on the other side. Lastly, we need to get this belt around the pulley of this motor. Reach in there with my tweezers to pull that up and over. You may get your belt twisted. If so, just flip it by lifting one end and turning it 180 degrees. Give it a couple of turns and that should settle in the right place.